Welcome. My name is John Fisher. I am CHIC's Chief Executive, and I'm going to try and chair this session, which is a fairly straightforward task. For the next hour or so, we want to talk to you about the new Kitchens and Bathrooms framework, which we have people on the call, our participants in one way or another, and we will explain that. Slide, please. There we go. Hannah has the great privilege of moving the slides for us. So if you hear people say next, they're not being rude, they just want the next slide. I'll just skip you through kind of why we're here and a bit of background to CHIC. Then Mike and Ritten from our procurement team, you'll be able to see hopefully at the top of your screens. We'll talk through the framework structure and procurement process. Adrian, one of our heads of member services, will then talk to you about how work is awarded under the framework, and then into the techie stuff. Liam, our Director of Strategic Services, will talk to you about both the work specification and the important methods of payment and so on. And then hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions you may raise at the end. So hopefully you can see all the colleagues in their little windows on your screen. They're going to turn their videos off until it's their kind of turn to speak. So we'll be turning things on and off and be muted. So you're going to be stuck just with Hannah and with me now, I'm afraid. So next. The kind of operational stuff around using Zoom, what's on and off. So if you've got questions, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A function. If you could plonk your question in there, and at the end of the presentations, we've left a bit of time to pose those questions. So I will try and raise them and consolidate them where we have more than one on the same thing. So the panel of colleagues who will be able to answer them. So if you use the Q&A function, the raise hand function is disabled, or should be, just to make the questions manageable. The chat function should be live, so if you want to share information, please use the chat function. And if you miss stuff, there's quite a few slides with quite a lot of information. This will be uploaded onto the CHIC website within a day or so as a video, but with the slides available as well. So I'm very mindful that as we flick through them, there might be questions you have, but yeah, you're very welcome to have the slides afterward. Next. So who we're joined by today are effectively three separate groups. The new framework partners, so essentially contractors who have proven themselves competent to fit kitchens and in some cases supply and fit kitchens, and the same with bathrooms. We have some of our member representatives who are the likely users of the framework to access contractors to support them, and team colleagues, both those whose pictures you've just seen on the screen, but also a few others from the CHIC team. So that is who is with us. Next. So a little bit about CHIC. Some of the organisations on this webinar have long-term relationships or longer-term relationships with CHIC through other frameworks and our dynamic purchasing system. Others, you'll be accessing us for the first time. So just a tiny bit from me about kind of the background. So CHIC's procurement consortium, but one with a background steeped in asset management. A lot of us come from asset management backgrounds and provide compliant procurement. So we kind of understand the world that you work in as contractors. CHIC is owned by its members and it's governed by the members. So we have a non-exec board comprising mainly member representatives and a couple of independents. So they make sure that the strategy that we work to and the operational outcomes are in line with member expectations. So that's a really important kind of backbone to the consortium. We make sure that our frameworks and dynamic purchasing system solutions then meet the needs of affordable housing landlords and you'll see in a minute, they make up the majority of our membership. We have a dedicated team. Colleagues on this call are representatives of it, and that's provided under a formal contract by our consultancy, who is an asset management consultancy, but the whole team is dedicated to CHIC. The contract was procured in the same way that your framework's just been procured. And our kind of USP, we like to think, is as well as working closely with members, we also work closely with the supply chain. We see you as partners. Once you're on a framework, we want to work with you. So together, we can do the right things for our members and help them deliver best services to their customers. Next. So our members, CHIC's been going about 15 years. We started with a little nucleus of about 7 organisations in the West Midlands. You can see from the map we've kind of grown a fair bit and now work across the UK, very active, particularly in most parts of England and in Wales. The little dots on the map show where our members' head offices are based, but you will appreciate for housing landlords, they cover much bigger geography than just where their office is. In many cases, so pretty comprehensive coverage across the UK. And important, CHIC's a not-for-profit consortium. We get our fees reimbursed back through the supply chain, and colleagues will talk more about that a bit later. Next. I've talked about kind of where the members are. We've now got over 250 members, well over 1,000 supply chain partners. Many on the call are now part of that and probably were already in some cases. We've got a whole range of services across the asset management world, principally in housing, and our combined members, customers, live in over 2 million homes in the UK. So the potential market we can support is quite significant. Currently live with over 700 contracts called off from our frameworks, and the spend this financial year of somewhere around between 250 and 300 million. And lots of that can be some very small value contracts. We do lots of supported work in building safety and compliance and consultancy services where the actual contract value is quite small. So some big ones, small ones, and everything in between. Next. So frameworks, again, colleagues will talk about this in a little bit more detail in a moment, but our framework offer is pretty comprehensive. We have frameworks for most things asset management particularly across the housing sector. How they work and operate, I'm not going to talk about because colleagues will shortly. Next. Our services, I've already said, work across kind of the asset management activities, principally in the housing sector. So they sit kind of under eight headings, and the important one for today is capital and planned investment. So all housing landlords and other public sector authorities do have to have rolling programs of capital investment into their homes, and particularly for housing, kitchens and bathrooms are on regular cycles. Typically, kitchens should be replaced around 20 years old and bathrooms around 30. So you'll appreciate with the scale of operation that creates for each individual one of our members and aggregate it. That's why we have the framework. So organisations, this is key to their capital and planned investment programs. So we have a availability of organisations to help them deliver those program requirements. Thank you. Next. So why are organisations members of us, of CHIC? And essentially we're there to drive efficiencies through the asset management sector in housing and other public sector bodies. And we do that in a couple of ways. One, by aggregating purchasing. By procuring a framework, there is a saving for the landlords because they haven't each got to run a separate comprehensive public procurement process. But also, hopefully, for the supply chain, you are going through what is quite a comprehensive exercise from a procurement point of view. You're going through it only once to get onto a framework, and then with much quicker routes to market, hopefully, to be awarded work from that framework. So that reduces cost, but also we separate materials from labour. Again, there'll be more about that a little bit later. And by doing so, we aggregate purchasing power, hopefully consolidate and standardize outcomes, and therefore drive a more efficient market, both at tier one contractor level, but also supply chain as well. All of that should deliver and does, based on our analysis over the last 15 years, better value for money for our members and their customers, but also more certainty and better value and confidence, essentially, for our supply chain partners. Next. Structure, not going to go into this in any detail. Essentially, the board I've talked about, there's a dedicated team, and one of the colleagues later will take you into kind of the key touch points for you as framework members with that. So I'll move on. Social value, really important. We pledge as a consortium 10% of our turnover each year to be reinvested into social value activities. So that's direct, both in terms of what we deliver and we engage in. And part of that is an expectation through all contracts procured through CHIC that a minimum of 1% of the value, the annual value of that contract will be monitored and measured as in social value outcomes. The contracting world in particular are pretty good at this. We recognise that. So we want to work in partnership with you and monitor what you're doing. We're not prescriptive about what it is. There's a choice. If you've seen the tender documents, you'll understand what those choices are. But we absolutely want to deliver social value back into the communities of the organisations paying for works through the framework. So that's an expectation. We do other stuff on top of that, but I won't go through that now in detail. So next. Last slide from me is about promotion. We've already promoted and put out in the press, and I've seen it in various publications, the fact that we've now launched this framework, which is good news. Each of your organisations, if you're a framework partner, has been provided with an onboarding pack to enable you to do your own press releases. And you can, as a framework partner, use our kite mark, which is shown there now on the right-hand side of the slide. Moving forward, there are various things that we do to promote CHIC to its members in conjunction with the supply chain. An important one is our conference, which takes place. It's a one-day conference every May in Telford. Normally, we get upwards of 600 people there representing our members and the chance for partners to promote effectively their wares. But we also have a monthly publication. You should now be on the circulation list for that. If not, let my marketing colleagues know. The marketing email address is bottom right. And through that, we will update organisations on what we're doing. And we do have a supply chain section in that publication where we're happy to promote case studies, examples, innovations that member organisations are involved in and or that supply chain partners are involved in. So if you've got some good ideas and want to promote it, we're happy to support that. So that's the kind of warm-up. I'm now going to hand over to, next slide, two of our procurement colleagues, Senior Procurement Manager Mike Ivory and Procurement Manager Ritten, who will take you through kind of the procurement part of the framework agreement. So Mike, Ritten, over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, John, and good morning, everyone. So just to introduce myself, my name is Michael Ivory. I am the Senior Procurement Manager here at CHIC, and I'll introduce Ritten as the slides go on. For the suppliers on the call, myself and Ritten have been the ones that have been pestering you for clarifications for the last kind of 6 to 8 weeks. So yeah, it's good for yourselves to put kind of a face to a name. So next slide, please, Hannah. So we've kind of split the slide deck between ourselves. I will be talking about the journey, where we were, and where we are essentially to the current day, whereas my colleague Ritten will kind of talk about moving forward and how the framework's going to operate. So this is a very quick snapshot of the procurement journey that we've been on. This has 5 stages. The CHIC procurement journey actually has a few more, but these are the stages that are kind of really relevant to kind of yourselves on this call. So as all procurement journeys start, our first stage is our stakeholder engagement. So this is where we have conversations with our external and internal colleagues, and this is really to get kind of advice on how the framework is to be procured, whether that be an existing or a new framework, framework strategy, external market forces, what tender outcomes are required, etc. So it's really key that we get that engagement as kind of as the first stage of this journey, which then essentially feeds into our second stage, which is our procurement strategy. So following on from those aforementioned conversations with our stakeholders, this guides the procurement strategy in relation to our sourcing and tender documentation. And we do this in order to optimize our value and mitigate our risks for everyone involved on the framework. Again, like I've mentioned, this follows on from the information we've gleaned from the outcome of work regarding the likes of market forces, etc. Essentially, then this feeds into the third stage when we're ready to go and actually launch the procurements. Now, as yourselves know, this is done through our e-sourcing portal, and clarifications are answered through the tender process as part of the P documents within the tender documentation. Now, once we receive the submissions, once the tender has finished, ourselves in procurement, we carry out the completeness and compliance checks during, as soon as that period ends. And that contains aspects such as financial reports, insurances, accreditations, exclusions, construction line verification, if that's required. Again, once we receive your responses, the quality part of the tender response is reviewed outside of procurement, actually, by an evaluation panel. Now, this evaluation panel consists of 3 evaluators, and they score each question. However, procurement then hosts the moderation meetings further on down the evaluation to come to a final consensus score. We also have a commercial team that review the pricing information, and that's where further clarifications are then sent to yourselves to ensure that requirements of the tender were met and that each commercial response was scored fairly and in accordance with the PCR 2015 regulations. Once we've got all that and a final technical and commercial score is reached, in procurement, we then generate a board report, which is sent to our CHIC board detailing the process and outcome of the tender process for sign-off, which then moves us on to stage 4. And you can see by the arrows at the top, this is we're at this stage 4, stage 5 in the procurement journey at the moment. So once we've got that signed off by the board, the intent to award letters are distributed to the suppliers, informing them of the outcome, which starts the 10-day standstill period, again, as per the 2015 regulations. Once standstill was concluded, which it was, the award letters are distributed, I believe it was the 2nd of August, and the frameworks are sent for signature. And then we go through an onboarding process to mobilize the framework, having these kind of kick-off webinar meetings, etc. So that's all part of stage 4. But then that's not the end for us at CHIC. We have this final stage, which is our framework management. So at CHIC, we monitor our frameworks from the full life cycle, from cradle to grave, to ensure that value is delivered and the performance is met. So any individual call-off contracts under this framework will actually be managed by ourselves, whether that be through a direct award mechanism or through further competition. And we'll also carry out kind of post-project reviews to review lessons learned, performance, etc., on how we can improve as well. Next slide, please, Hannah. So this is a very brief procurement timeline. Yourselves would have been quite aware of this, but the kitchens and bathrooms tender was published on the 23rd of April, and it was a 6-week tender period. We did grant a slight extension on the tender period. We then had 5 weeks, roughly give or take, to do the evaluation, and we give ourselves that time to ensure that these, again, are evaluated fairly and impartially. As mentioned on the previous slide, the board report was generated and approved the following week, and then the intent to award letters were sent on the 22nd of July. That started the standstill period, or the Alcatel period, as some of you may know it as, which finished on midnight on the 2nd of August, and then the commencement of the framework agreement followed on shortly after that. Next slide, please, Hannah. So in regard to the lots of the framework, this was actually relatively quite simple in how it was split. There were two lots, and within each lot, there were two further work streams that our suppliers could bid on. So lot one consisted of works for kitchens, with work stream one containing the installation, and work stream two, the supplying installation. And that was mirrored in lot two as well, but just for bathrooms. So as mentioned, suppliers were given the flexibility to bid on specific lots and work streams if required. However, if work stream 2 was selected, we did put in further pass-fail questions that had to be satisfied in order for the tender to progress. And this covered aspects such as the tender's delivery team, supply chain management, product performance, and environmental aspects of the supply chain. So there was a little bit more that needed to be answered if the second work stream was selected, and this is going to be further elaborated on in the next coming slide. Sorry. Next slide, please, Hannah. So the way we kind of scored the tender, we used the MAT terminology, the most advantageous tender for their weightings. And as you can see on this slide, there was a kind of 50-50 split between quality and price. So there was actually a minimum quality score as per the tender documentation that had to be achieved in order for the tender to progress. But quality was split further down for 4 questions on service delivery. Each of these were weighted at 10%, and a question on social value also weighted at 10%. The questions on service delivery covered aspects such as mobilisation and resource, quality assurance, defects management, and the method statements for delivery and management of the contract. And we chose these points because we believe that these points ensure that the tenderer could deliver on projects that are to be delivered under the framework. And as mentioned, these were scored by an evaluation panel of 3 evaluators, as set out in the scoring methodology in the tender documentation. The pricing was also further split, as you can see, and this again is discussed later on in the presentation, but that 50% is further broken down by kitchen and bathroom rates prices at 25%, provisional items at 15%, labour rates at 15%, and NHF rates, labour rates at 5% and NHF rates at 5%. What the framework does allow us to do is if there is a further competition that's called off under this framework, it does allow for a 10% deviation on these quality price ratings. So it's not set in stone that every competition will be 50-50 quality price. We do have that flexibility for that deviation. Next slide, please, Hannah. So this is just to give a overview of lot submissions and awards. So we had a total of 32 submissions for workstream 1, the installation for both lots, and 31 for workstream 2, which is installation supply of both lots. We have unfortunately did have to reject the tender submission, which led then the remaining submissions, as you can see in that far right column, awarded onto the framework. So that's kind of where we are currently. I'm now going to pass on to my colleague, Riton Aguera, who will then go through kind of the next steps and how we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. My name is Riton, Procurement Manager at CHIC. So I'll be presenting the next couple of slides. So this slide talks about the member and supplier spread. The map on the right-hand side obviously shows the graphical reach of all the suppliers who were awarded a place on the framework. Now, just to note, this is their coverage. It's not necessarily their sort of head office or depot locations. When we went out to tender, we asked suppliers what areas they could cover in the UK using the UK NUTS code system. Key message for this slide is that the majority of the works awarded will be wherever our members are located, as shown on the map on the left. So where you've got a higher concentration of members, there will be a high level of activity. Any contracts awarded to suppliers, either via the mini-comp or direct award, depending on the size and the value of the contracts that the supplier has the capacity to execute. Next. Framework signatories. So when the award standstill period ended in early August, our colleagues in CHIC commercial team sent out a number of framework agreements for signature for all of the suppliers for their respective lots and work streams that they'd chosen. Most of them have come in, but there's still a few signatories that we need. So as a gentle reminder to all the partners on the call, if you're one of the suppliers who have yet to supply your signed agreement, please do so as soon as possible, as our members have obviously a pipeline of works and they're keen to get started on kitchen and bathroom refurbishments. Next slide, please. Framework use. So as John said earlier in the slide, as you may be aware, it's free for members to join CHIC, and there's no direct cost for members to use any of our frameworks. Members will pay the rates set by the suppliers as per the prices submitted on the framework, or they can offer a more competitive price if they go via the further competition route. It's important to note that the prices submitted via further competition do not exceed those rates submitted as part of their successful bid on the framework. And lastly, suppliers pay a small percentage of their prices as agreed within the framework as a management fee to CHIC. Next. So how does it work? CHIC's frameworks are published as unranked, as John mentioned earlier, providing the flexibility for our members to need to work with the suppliers who they want. They are non-exclusive and can be used alongside members' existing suppliers. Members have the discretion to award works via mini competition or direct award. In the case of direct award, obviously a robust business case is required to support the decision. And lastly, all works procured via CHIC and any mini competitions will go via our e-sourcing portal hosted by Panacea. Next. So I'll just hand you over to my colleague Adrian Hussein, who is the head of Member Services East, who will take you through the next section about awarding work under the framework.
Thank you, Ritten. Good morning, everybody. My name is Adrian Hussein, and I'm Head of Member Services for the East here at CHIC, looking after our members. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be talking about how we award contracts under the framework. But first, I'd like to just mention contracts that we're currently supporting our members with. So utilising the old framework, which this now replaces, we're currently supporting 20 members with active contracts across the country. So that just gives you a bit of an indication of how much work is currently going through CHIC at the moment on kitchens and bathrooms and what you look to achieve as this framework continues. Next slide, please. So as it's been alluded to previously by my colleagues, there are two ways in which contracts can be awarded through the framework. The first one is a mini competition. This is where a member will come to us with specification and requirements for works, and then it's put out through our e-sourcing portal for tender. And then our supply chain are able to tender for those works, utilising the price and quality submissions, similar to what you have done in the framework tender process. This allows more flexibility for our members and allows to secure more competitive pricing, especially if it's a more tailored project and the numbers in the projects are large in comparison. Next slide, please. The second way to award through the framework is through a direct award. Now, this is generally used as an emergency route to market, a very quick route to market when the member requires work to start imminently and does not have time to complete a mini competition process. But it's also utilised where suppliers and members already have an existing relationship and they're looking to extend that relationship further, and they can utilise that through our framework. As Ritten has mentioned already, however, in order to utilise this route to market, there does need to be a robust business case in place which complies with the exclusions that are listed in PCR 2015. Next slide, please. So how does that work? Members can come to us on the left-hand side, as you can see, to a member of the CHIC member services team, head of member service, with their requirement. They can advise us whether they wish to direct award or do a mini competition, and then we follow that process through the procurement channels through to the call-off. Alternatively, if the supply chain have a possible route into a member and they're looking to, and they've heard of an opportunity, or they're already with a member and looking to extend that opportunity, then supply chain can also come through the procurement team, the strategic services team, sorry, and then we can assist in awarding the contract that way. So there are two ways in which contracts are made through this framework, and both members and supply chain partners are encouraged to advise us and notify us of any opportunities so we can assist. Next slide, please. So the member services team are split all across the UK. We're split into 6 different regions, as you can see in the map on the left-hand side. This allows each head of member services to have a one-to-one rapport with the members in those areas, allows us to help support and assist them with all of their procurement requirements. Supply chain, if you do have any opportunities in any of these areas, there should have been a member map and our contact details included as part of your onboarding, which you can then utilise to contact us directly so we can assist you as well. Next slide, please. As John alluded to at the beginning of the call, we have over 250 members that's with CHIC, and this is just a small breakdown to show you exactly in what areas our members are situated in. So as you can see, the majority, are within our registered providers of social housing. We'd also have local authorities, blue light service, health, education, and other contracting authorities as well. Next, please. And this is just grouping those members into a more manageable group of people. So housing association, 71%, local authority, 25%, and then blue lights, health and other in 3%. Next slide, please. This is just one of many frameworks that we have procured or will be procuring over the course of this year and next year. So far this year, we've awarded our new windows and doors supply contract framework, a new build framework, legal services framework, kitchen supply framework, our healthy homes framework, which was missed from that slide. And we're currently in the process of procuring our fire and building safety, both passive and active framework. Later this year, we'll be putting out to tender our new mechanical and electrical works framework, M&E framework, as well as multiple elements, merchants, restricted mobility, decoration and pre-decoration repairs, as well as any others that we may come across which our members are asking us to look into. We try to stay ahead of the game. We try to ensure that we're providing our members with the best possible frameworks so that they can procure through us compliantly. And we always listen to not only our members, but our supply chain partners on how we can improve our services and improve the frameworks so that all parties get the best possible outcomes. Next slide, please. And thank you. That's it from me. I'll now pass you to Liam Gratty, who is our Director of Strategic Services, who's going to talk you through the specification and cost model for the framework.
Thanks, Adrian. Yes, I'm Liam Gratty, Director of Strategic Services. I'm responsible for the techie bit, as John put it earlier. I'm going to talk us through how the cost models are structured and what's involved in the specification. Next slide, please. So, as mentioned previously, the framework is split into 2 core lots, one for kitchens and one for bathrooms. And beneath those lots sits individual work streams, one for the supply and fit model, and one for the installation only of Category 1 materials provided by the member. Next slide, please. So in terms of Category 1 materials, one of CHIC's founding principles was to try and glean some benefit from members purchasing materials and labour separately. and allow members to purchase goods and materials directly from manufacturers and take advantage of the consortium's aggregated spend. So under this model, members can directly purchase from manufacturers or distributors, and they can be distributed to site or to the contractor directly. Within the specification, within the tables you can see on the slides there, they are the key components of the installations, so typically kitchen cabinets and sanitary ware. Next slide, please. In terms of sourcing the materials, CHIC already has established frameworks in place. This will enable members to undertake further competition or direct award, and that can give preferential rates through the framework and further de-risk projects. We currently have the kitchen supply framework with numerous leading manufacturers in place. They can provide both pre-assembled and flat pack options for plumbing goods, sanitary ware, etc. We do have the merchant services framework. Both of those frameworks, as discussed previously, do have direct award and further competition options. If members do want to broaden the procurement and bring more suppliers into that competition, we do also have a very broad DPS with a number of asset management, facilities management categories, and that allows members also to bring incumbents or known suppliers into the competition. Next slide, please. So to aid the delivery of Category 1 materials, CHIC operates the CHIC order management system, the COM system. That was an in-house development designed specifically for this purpose. The overarching idea of the system was that it's a one-stop shop to provide members, contractors, and suppliers with an easy-to-use interface to manage their orders and their programs of work. So on the slide there, you can see that some of the features. So this is a browser-based system, which is akin to any other online shopping platform. You can provide single orders for goods and materials at a property level basis with a fixed budget, and the system will then distribute those orders out to multiple suppliers. Next slide, please. So on to the specification. This is a pretty straightforward specification. It's typically a planned program component renewal specification. And the scope of that spec is end-to-end process from resident liaison right through to post-completion inspection and handover. Next slide, please. So in terms of the cost models have been structured to reflect the workstream structure. So the pricing basis for workstream 1 under each of the lots is the installation of the Category 1 materials supplied by the member and the supply and fit of all other goods and materials and associated work. And the second workstream, which is a traditional supply and fit model, but is priced a little bit differently. So this is more of an open book approach. So our suppliers that have been awarded to this framework have applied a percentage adjustment for overhead, profit and prelims for the supply of the Category 1 materials. Next slide, please. For bathrooms, the pricing structure is the same. What I didn't mention actually about the kitchens was it's priced on an archetypal basis. Bathrooms is priced on a bathroom design basis. So a bathroom renewal like for like, a bath out, shower in, and a level access shower. Now these are obviously specific designs to provide a common basis for pricing, and there will be variations per call off, but it provides the core rates, materials and activities for the works. Next slide, please. Provisional items. So with this framework, what we've done is included a suite of provisional items. So that really is to account for any unforeseen works likely to occur on site. So there's common activities and works in the schedules. Any works that may be identified upon the design or a pre-start survey that may constitute a variation. So any items that are not covered by the specification. Any associated works where the quantities may exceed those within the schedules. A typical example of that may be plastering. So within the specification, there's an allowance for 5 square meters of plastering. So within the provisional items, there are extra overcosts in there that can be called off. What it will also do is it will provide a suite of rates where members may have already undertaken other programs of refurbishment work. I think we know that across our stock portfolios, refurbishment is at different levels across different areas of properties. So for larger value works, for example, rewiring, if there's parts of the stock that have already had first fixed wiring completed under a previous program, this allows valuation of those key components, which could be omitted in the valuation process. Next slide, please. Additional rates, as with the majority of our frameworks, we do have day rates and hourly rates for operatives that can be called off. And to cover all bases, we have asked suppliers to provide a percentage adjustment upon the NatFed SOR's version 8 planned works module. On CHIC fees, we've already discussed CHIC operates an industry standard trickle fee. Within the pricing models, that is very transparent. So for each line item within those cost models, a CHIC fee percentage is applied, which provides a built-up rate. What this means is the member doesn't pay any additional framework charges. All fees are built into the rate. So when it comes to invoicing, CHIC then recover that fee directly from the supply chain. Next slide, please. Just to finish up, I wanted to talk about partnership support, and especially for those suppliers and contractors that are new to CHIC. So we do have a dedicated partnerships team, and we really value our relationships with the supply chain. We try to have continuous engagement. We want to make sure that we can support you to establish your position in the marketplace. By being on the CHIC framework, that gives you exposure to public sector organisations, gives you the opportunity to work in partnership with CHIC, to work on case studies, tell the sector about what you are doing. It gives you the opportunity to build long-term relationships with us as a asset management and procurement consortium. And it also gives you the opportunity to build those long-term relationships with our membership. As we've discussed earlier on in the slides, being on the framework, you will get market recognition, and you can use that as an opportunity to build further business within the sector. We also need to raise the importance of our unranked procurement. So all of our frameworks are unranked. That provides all suppliers with an equal and fair opportunity of work. On top of that, it's not just frameworks that CHIC provide. We have briefly spoken about our dynamic purchasing system, and what I would really encourage our new suppliers especially to do is to reach out to the partnerships team and understand what our offering is in terms of dynamic purchasing system. There are lots of categories within the asset management and facilities management disciplines that you can apply to be on, and that will increase your opportunities to compete in further competitions. Next slide, please. That's me done. Thank you very much. I'll hand you back to John Fisher for the Q&A session.
Thanks, Liam, and to other colleagues who all switched their cameras back on because of a bit of time for questions. We're kind of bang on time, which is excellent. I'm very mindful, folks, that there was a lot of information there. Some of it was repetitive, intentionally repetitive, and a lot of information in the slides that we flicked through fairly quickly. So again, they will be available. We have had a few questions come in during the course of that, so I'm just going to pose those, if I may, to colleagues who are now on a panel. The first one is from one of the new framework members, saying that from a contractor's point of view, having a longer contract makes sense because we can drive efficiencies through kind of year-on-year learning and invest in the workforce. So if I've got a willing member who wants to let a long-term contract, just how long can that be? So I think that's a good procurement-related question. Mike, would you like to pick that up?
Yeah, of course. So the framework is a 4-year framework. However, as part of the mechanism underneath the framework, we can call off contracts for up to 2 years after the framework expiry. So we do potentially have we can potentially put call offs up until that 2030 period.
Excellent. So we can have relatively long-term contracts, which is important to drive more efficiencies for both members and for our supply chain partners. That's good. Next question is, I think, for you, Liam. You mentioned on one of your slides the COMS, our contractor order management system. If a member wants to use that because they're having materials supplied direct, how do we pay for COMS? What's the cost of it?
So COMS is a service provided as part of CHIC membership. There's no additional charges for that. I would encourage members and contractors, actually, if they are interested in operating that system, utilising the system as part of their works, that they reach out to us and we can arrange for a demonstration for how that works.
Okay, so included within the fee is the message. It's no extra charge. Good, thank you for that. We've then got a question about membership and client relationships. So this is from an organisation. So if I've a contractor who has an existing contract that's been running satisfactorily, but we know it's coming to an end at some point during the course of the framework, can my client, if I'm a contractor, join CHIC if they're not a member, and can they access the framework for that contract to continue? Is that kind of what direct call off means? Adrian, I think you kind of touched on this in your presentation, so would you like to pick that up, please?
Certainly, John. So yes, short answer is yes. If the contractor in question is on the framework itself, but the client is not a member of CHIC yet, they can join CHIC very easily. As mentioned previously, there's no fee for joining CHIC, so they can become members, and then they can utilise the direct award mechanism with a robust business case. One of those reasonings would be that there's already a existing relationship in place, which can be utilised as part of that business case.
Good, thank you, Adrian. We've had a question about the Procurement Act. So if I try and kind of paraphrase this, there's a new Procurement Act that was legislated in 2023 that becomes live in October 24. How does that affect this framework? What are the implications? Ritten, can you pick that up?
Yeah, John, I'll take that. It's a really good question. So the short answer is the new Kitchen and Bathrooms framework won't be impacted by the new Procurement Act that comes into force in October. So because the framework was procured in the current regulations, then it will continue for its lifetime up until 2028 under the current regulations. Obviously, when this framework expires in 2028 and we re-procure it, that will then be done under the new regulations. You might be wondering, well, what happens to all our other frameworks come October this year? They will continue to operate under the current regulations. They won't suddenly switch over come October. So CHIC will go through an interesting transitional period where we're managing regulations, the old regulations, and then the new ones as well. So I hope that answers the question.
So effectively, this is old regs, and old regs continue to apply to this framework until its time expired in 4 years' time. Okay, thanks. We've had another, which is about relationships with suppliers. So I think what the question is if I'm a contractor on the framework and I'm being asked to work with a supplier who's supplying materials, and we've had a previous dispute with them, and I assume I don't really want to work with them again. How do we deal with that? Liam, that sounds like a nice operational techie question for you. Would you try and answer that, please?
Yes. Part of our role is very much to probably firstly try and facilitate that discussion. If it's not an option to work with that supplier, we do have a very broad supply chain that we can recommend alternatives. Part of CHIC's role is to provide support end to end through the process. So it would either be a facilitation role, or if there was no further mileage in having those discussions, then we would have to look at alternative products and suppliers.
Okay, but it won't presumably be the first time for us that there's two organisations who we're asking potentially to work together and the relationship is strained, and that's not going to be in our members' interest for that to continue. So we will need to understand it and support an outcome which works for all supply chain partners to make the member outcome effective. Okay, so that's particularly where our partnership support comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. We've had a question on kind of staying in touch. So, Tracy, I'm not sure whether you are from a member or from a supply chain partner, but the question is, can we have regular meetings with heads of member services for the appropriate area that we're approved for? And I think I'm going to try and answer this because the member services team are kind of front of house for interrelationships with the members, and will regularly meet with the members and will have oversight of contracts that are live. So the answer is yes, kind of if it's a live contract. If it's about contractors on the framework having regular contact, that would typically be through the partnerships team. So Mike Harris is our partnerships manager, who's on holiday today, and he's not here, but part of Liam's team would and colleagues will manage the regular interaction with supply chain partners. And Mike's role is to make sure that he keeps in touch with all supply chain members wherever possible on a regular basis. So, Tracy, if your question was about from a member perspective, it's yes with the member services team. If it's from a supply chain perspective, it would typically be through the partnerships team until a contract's awarded and has become live. Liam, Adrian, do you want to add anything to that?
Only that we do like to meet our supply chain as well to get a better understanding of their service offering. So we may be occasions where we come and meet a supplier just to have a better understanding of what they offer, understand how they offer it to our members. So when we are speaking to our members, we can provide them a little bit more information, a little bit more detail.
Okay, thanks. Good. That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the questions that have come into us. So hopefully we've answered those. It doesn't quite conclude them because another one has just pinged in, so I'm going to see what that one is. Will the copy of the presentation be provided to all attended today? Yes, it will, and there'll be a video upload via the website. So Hannah, who's expertly planned this webinar and steered us through the slides, will consolidate all that, and it will all be available through the website, if not later today, then tomorrow. So yes, information will be there. Okay, so I think we've dealt with the questions. We're just inside time, which is good. Just leaves it for me to thank everybody. So some of our members are on this call, and they'll be the likely users of the framework. So thank you to them for supporting the framework, and they were involved in some of the tender scoring as well. So a grateful thanks to them. Thank you to my colleagues for preparing for and doing their part in the webinar presentation. Important that you see some of the faces from CHIC having been through the procurement process, and we want that to continue. So thanks to you guys. And above all, thanks to all of the new framework partners. Some of you have been partners and are on other frameworks anyway, but to those of you and those of you who are new, welcome to potential work with CHIC. For going through the procurement process, we know it can be a bit turgid if you're going through it, but it's a necessary activity from a public procurement point of view, but then gives relatively effective route to market. So we welcome you to the framework. We're there to work with you and look forward to doing that over the forthcoming years. So again, thanks very much to everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.